You ready? Okay. For the record, both assistant state attorneys are present in Mr. Rodgers' case. Mr. Rodgers is present and all four defense counsel. Okay. Did you guys have an opportunity to meet last night?
We did. It clarified quite a bit, if I may. And first, I do want to state for the record that the state, we have worked together extensively. Many of the things that we've received, if we don't always all have the same software, with a lot of the things we receive, they'll send software with it, just in an abundance of caution. We've sat down with them, we've gone over physical evidence, we've gone over paper evidence, we've talked extensively. So I didn't mean to convey that we haven't talked about this case or met. With regard to this, to the trace evidence and the DNA, we have what I would call a series of not speaking the same language as the FBI. The records that they sent were all sent. The records I requested were not, despite Ms. Otterstatter on the stand answering questions saying that some of it was sent, specifically the raw data, photographic quality pictures. She said yes. However, in meeting with her, she said no raw data was sent. There are pictures within the documents, which really, it's not what I asked for, it's not, but the FBI, according to her, sent what she had. No, not the extra stuff. What the state received, the FBI said, I don't want to speak for them, but said, yep, that's it. So we look at it, and it's not there. There isn't the raw data. There isn't any indication of how the items were stored, which I particularly, what was consumed versus not consumed. No list of programs with the manufacturer and version. That part was very enlightening in talking to them. In an effort so it could be independently reanalyzed from raw data, from pictures, from the slides that are in detail enough that someone, an analyst, could examine them to reconstruct the analysis. I asked for frequency tables or statistics, which weren't sent, but I learned in deposition because they weren't relied on. With regard to the mitochondrial evidence, there's a file with all the raw data, which the state couldn't open, we couldn't open, and Mr. Mummer couldn't open. Well, in speaking with Ms. Fentress, we learned that, of course not, we can't open it. We don't have the special software. And the software is very expensive, and yeah, she was not surprised we couldn't open it. So, that's where we are. So we didn't receive specifically what we requested, despite my request going directly to the FBI. But at the same time, some of, not the raw data, but the other items, the actual analysis, I didn't receive. So I think it was very enlightening, and did I cover that, or?
I think if I can just make a few points of clarification, I think Ms. George covered it well. If I can just make a few points of clarification. For Ms. Otterstatter, I think what she said on the stand, to Your Honor, was accurate. She does not take photos and preserve photos. She just took a couple to mark where what she was doing in her report. She does not have a photo file. There are no photos that exist other than what's in that report that Ms. Fitzgeorge has. There are no photos behind those photos that can then be changed into a different format. What they do preserve, and what the FBI does have, are the slides upon which the examination was done, unless something was sent on for further examination and was consumed in that. But the actual slides of the fibers and those slides that were used, both of the unknowns and the knowns, were preserved and are available, but they don't do photos. And she went through the files that were sent from the FBI and said that was all of what she had. So I think Ms. Otterstatter made it very clear. Ms. Fentress, who is here to testify regarding DNA, provided the information for, and went through again the discovery provided, and then did say to Ms. Fitzgeorge, no, you can't open that, and I can't provide you the software, and the rest, I think, was fairly well represented by Ms. Fitzgeorge.
I would just say, had I known that at the time, I would have gone forward knowing that. However, through no one's fault, I kept being told, you have it, you have it, you have it.
Well, that's why we needed to talk to her.
Yes.
Okay. Well, where are we at now then? Either side.
The state's ready to call Ms. Otterstatter this morning.
I would just renew my previous objections in terms of getting to this point, the eve of her taking the stand, only to find out. I think it has hindered me in this regard. So I would renew my objections to proceeding with her testimony.
Your objections are noted for the record.
Thank you.
Okay. How long do you think your direct will take?
45 minutes, at most an hour, Your Honor.
Okay.
I do have a PowerPoint presentation that was given to me last Thursday late. It was on my desk when I got back from court. Friday morning, I presented it was in color, a colored copy. It was not handed to me as a PowerPoint, but as papers. I presented a colored copy to counsel last Friday morning. I want to use that PowerPoint, but I am using it. It's a very lengthy PowerPoint, and I have said to counsel, I just wish to use the portion that pertains to the fiber analysis, and I have separated out those slides. There are no additional slides. Nothing's been modified in what was presented, simply removed slides that talk about hair analysis, and am just going to focus on the fiber analysis.
Can you tell me the pages prior to showing that they could be showing?
It's a demonstrative aid.
Yes, it's a demonstrative aid, Your Honor. It is not.
How many slides?
Can you give me just one moment, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's about 22 slides, Your Honor.
Are you doing them on the overhead with those, or are you doing them in the PowerPoint?
I will do them, they will be on PowerPoint,
Okay.
Your Honor, but going on to this screen here, it's set up on the computer. And these slides, as Ms. Fitzgeorge knows, really speak to preliminarily what is done. So they are demonstrative versus to this
Sure.
particular evidence.
Anything else other than the slide we need to talk about it before we have the witness brought in?
I don't think there is. I just want to note, I showed Ms. Fitzgeorge one photograph that our AV specialist was able to make from the picture that was contained in the report that was provided in discovery in August. And I have shown that to Ms. Fitzgeorge, and we'll be using this one photograph with the witness.
Yes, that's fine.
I can give you guys a few moments if you want to go through the particular slides you're going to use with Miss Fitzgeorge.
I just like to know, what pages specifically will and will not be.
Okay.
So-
We'll give you a few moments. I mean, I've got another trial call that we're close enough. Maybe I'll just go to that after. You guys can talk. We'll go off record and let me know when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense is ready. Renewed objections. Noted for the record. And for the record also, both assistant state attorneys are present, Mr. Rodgers and all 4 defense counsel. Why don't we bring our jurors out? That would help, right? That would help. I almost said for next witness. Please be seated. I'll ask our jurors again, did you follow my instructions? Not talk about the case among yourselves with anybody else or look up any of the people or places involved. Even if you did so inadvertently, now would be the time to raise your hand and let me know. For the record, no jurors lifted their hand. Next witness, state.
State called Linda Otterstatter.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Linda Otterstatter, spelled LINDA-OTTER-STATTER.
And Ms. Otterstatter, are you employed?
Yes, I am.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm employed with the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
And how long have you been so employed?
Approximately 13 years.
And in what capacity have you been employed by the FBI?
My title is Physical Scientist Forensic Examiner in the Trace Evidence Unit.
And before joining and have you been so employed with the FBI for the 13 years you've been with the FBI?
Yes.
Before joining the FBI, where were you employed?
I was employed at the Wyoming State Crime Lab in Cheyenne, Wyoming, as a forensic examiner in the Trace Evidence Unit for 6 years.
And if you could review with the jury your educational background, please.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Syracuse University. I also have additional coursework in chemistry from Colorado State University, as well as forensic science coursework from the Metropolitan State College of Denver, Colorado.
And have you received any training in the specialized, or have you received any specialized training in the field of fiber analysis?
Yes, I have. I successfully completed the FBI Forensic Examiner Training Program under the direct supervision and guidance of experienced examiners proficient in the field of hairs, fibers, fabric, and cordage evidence. This included a series of hair, fiber, fabric, and cordage examinations, comparison exams, supervised cases, oral board exams, and practical tests.
And you use the word cordage. I don't know if members of the jury would know what that is. What is cordage?
Cordage is a type of evidence that deals with rope, twine, string, things of that nature.
Have you also had additional, what I would call external training in the area of trace evidence?
I have. I completed a similar examiner training program for the state of Wyoming, as well as additional external trainings in hairs, fibers, fabric, and cordage evidence.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
I am. I am a member of the American Society of Trace Evidence Examiners.
And do you do fiber, hair, trace analysis exclusively? Is there any other area of analysis you do other than the 4 you mentioned? Fiber, hair, cordage?
No, that is all I conduct or examine, yes.
Now, when talking about fiber analysis, did you prepare a PowerPoint that you might use with the jury to talk about how fiber analysis is conducted?
I did, yes.
Your Honor, with permission to approach the witness, I'd like to ask them if they might, I can power click, but it might be better for her to click through her presentation.
May approach.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to hand you a clicker.
Okay.
The big button will forward the presentation. The small bottom button will make it go backwards.
Okay.
And if
Thank you.
that works, then if you can, if it doesn't, and you'll need to point it towards the,
Got it.
let's see if it works. I'm going to, there we go, it does. Now, is this a PowerPoint you put together to aid in just talking about fiber analysis generally?
Yes.
If you would proceed, thank you. So I will let you go through this with the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Okay. I wanted to start out with a basic definition of trace evidence. Trace evidence is debris that is small in size that can be transferred from one location to another. Examples of trace evidence include hairs, fibers, glass, and soil, for example. Why are hair and fiber exams conducted? The reason is based on Law&Crime's exchange principle, which states when two people or a person and an object come into contact, trace evidence such as hairs and fibers may be exchanged. By examining hairs and fibers collected from items of evidence, it can be determined whether or not a possible association exists between those two people or person and an object. What is a fiber? A fiber is a natural or manufactured material that is the basic element of a textile. To the left, there's a photo of fibers, single fibers under high magnification using transmitted light. Those fibers are spun or twisted together in some way to form yarns, which are knit and woven together to form fabric. How are fiber examinations conducted? The way we conduct fiber exams is a series of steps. First, you have processing of evidence, and I'll briefly talk about each of these after this slide. But processing of evidence, which is the collection of foreign debris from the item of evidence, as well as the preparing of hairs and fibers on glass microscope slides. The next is the identification of fibers. The next is comparison microscopy using a high magnification microscope. The next is polarized light microscopy, followed by fluorescence microscopy, followed by microspectrophotometry, followed by Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, shortened to FTIR. The first step, processing of items of evidence. So items of evidence in the laboratory are examined in specialized processing rooms in the trace evidence unit. The picture is of one of our processing rooms. Rooms are cleaned prior to every use. Items from the victim, suspect, and crime scene are processed in different rooms or on different dates to avoid cross-contamination. Protective clothing, such as gloves, hairnets, and lab coats, are worn and also changed prior to processing items from different individuals or scenes. There's different types of processing techniques or methods. There's taping or tape lifting, vacuuming, picking if it's a non-textile or fabric item. We put it directly under a low magnification microscope and pick items directly off the evidence, as well as scraping, where, pictured here, there's a shirt that's hung up on a bar with clean brown paper underneath it. The textile is scraped using a metal spatula, similar to what you would ice a cake with. And those foreign hairs and fibers from that shirt would fall onto the clean brown paper, and then we collect it into a small pill box. Next, using a stereo microscope, a low magnification microscope, Foreign debris collected from the item of evidence is examined. Potential hairs and fibers are prepared on glass microscope slides for microscopic examination. Next is the identification of fibers. A high magnification transmitted light microscope is utilized to examine the prepared microscope slides to identify if it's a hair or fiber and the fiber type. Is it natural or manufactured fibers? There's different microscopic characteristics associated with fibers that we use for examination and ultimately comparison purposes. This includes the color variation, and any surface color that's clumped onto the surface, shape of the fiber. Natural fibers have what's called lumen or a hollow canal running through the center, scales, and diameter. Manufactured fibers also have microscopic characteristics. Some of the characteristics that we examine and compare include color variation within one fiber, surface color, delusterant, which are titanium dioxide particles that are added to the manufactured fiber, any voids that are present, diameter, as well as the shape of fibers. These are examples of pictures on different types of shapes. Some of these include the fibers that are round. Sometimes they're square with holes, 4 holes running through the center. Some of them have. Sorry, is there a laser? No.
Yes, I do have a laser.
That's okay.
I'm just going to check and see if it's there.
That's okay. I can continue throughout.
And this button right here activates.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes fibers have multiple lobes. This one is like dog bone shaped. It has 2 lobes. Then you have fibers that are trilobal, have 3 lobes, or fibers that are regular shaped. And even if fibers have the same shape, there's also variation within a type of shape. So here pictured are trilobal fibers, where the lobes are thin and long versus shorter. Some of these vary in the length. These are equal, and these have two lobes that are the same and a short one. So there's variation within a fiber shape. The next step is comparison microscopy, and this is done using a comparison microscope, which is high magnification, and it's essentially 2 microscopes connected by an optical bridge. This allows for a direct side-by-side microscopic comparison. So it's like a split screen TV. You could have the question fibers on one side, on one slide, and the known on the other side. So you get a direct comparison. If there are no differences visualized using comparison microscopy, the next step is polarized light microscopy. And this is done with a separate microscope equipped with 2 polarizing filters, one below the stage called a polarizer and one above the stage called an analyzer. This allows for the determination of the fiber's optical properties. The optical properties depend on the fiber type and also the orientation of the molecules along the axis of the fiber. If no differences are seen with polarized light microscopy, then I move to fluorescence microscopy. This is done by illuminating the fiber with various wavelengths of light to observe if the fiber fluoresces at all, and if it does, the color and intensity of the fluorescence is observed. If there are no differences with fluorescence microscopy, then I moved to what's called a microspectrophotometry exam, MSP for short. This is an instrumental means of color comparison. So prior using comparison microscopy, it was a visual exam of color, among other characteristics. This takes it into an instrumental means. And the question and known fibers from the spectra from each of those are compared. If there's no differences using microspectrophotometry, the next step for manufactured fibers is Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. This is an instrumental method that uses an infrared beam of light to identify the polymer type, such as nylon, for example, and also the subtype, such as nylon. So you have nylon, and then the subtype would be like nylon 6,6, for example. And then also the question and known spectra are compared. That would be the FTIR is the last step, and that's when we reach a conclusion. So there are different types, there's two different types of conclusions that can be made. First is a fiber exclusion, and this is made if a difference is observed, and it can be concluded that fibers are not consistent with originating from the same source. Another type of conclusion is a fiber association. This is if fibers exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties. It can be concluded that the fibers are consistent with originating from the same source or another source comprised of fibers that exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties. Fiber association. A fiber association is not a means of positive identification. However, due to the variability in the manufacturing process, the dyeing process, consumer use, and the weathering of fibers within a textile, one would not expect to encounter a fiber at random that displays the same microscopic characteristics as an optical properties as a particular source. Fibers can differ as to the type, color, and shape, as well as size, microscopic features, and optical properties. These are characteristics that may associate fibers with a group of items, but never to a single item to the exclusion of all others. However, even fibers with many similar properties may be excluded as originating from the same source by using the identified analytical methods.
Thank you.
Is it possible to get some water? I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
In the case before this court today, were you asked to conduct trace examinations on certain items of evidence that were submitted to your lab?
Yes, I was.
And did you receive about 40 items from the Lee County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I did.
Did you let me start with what has been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 51. And I think it might be FBI number 32. But did you receive what would be called a known sample from the Lee County Sheriff's Office? Or let me have you look at what is State's Exhibit 51 and FBI number 32 and ask, if you look inside, what that is.
Yes.
And what is that?
This is FBI Laboratory Item 32, which is the coveralls from near roadway.
And what did those fibers look like?
Are you asking about the fibers that comprise?
Item 32,
coveralls?
which is State's Exhibit 51, yes.
The fibers, the known fibers comprising the coveralls were a blend of cotton and nylon fibers. They were, both the cotton and the nylon fibers were, appeared blue and purple and white variegated, which mean variegated is another word for multiple colors are seen within one fiber. And also there were just plain, straight, they appeared purple.
Did you use fibers that you obtained from item 32, State's Exhibit 51, to compare with items of trace evidence that you had received?
I did, yes.
And were there a series of items that you had received to examine? I just want to talk about the items now that you received to examine, that you compared and you were able, and you reached a conclusion as to, well, let me rephrase that. With respect to the known fibers that were in FBI item 32, what were your results regarding the trace evidence that you examined in comparing with it?
Purple and purple, blue, white variegated cotton fibers exhibiting the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as the purple, blue, white variegated fibers comprising item 32, which is the coveralls from near roadway, were recovered from the following. Item 2, FBI laboratory item 2, debris from left front floor of the Hyundai Elantra.
Yes, ma'am. I'll ask that you not refer to any notes unless if you need to refresh your recollection, you'll have to let counsel know and they can assist you in that.
Okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
May I refer to my notes?
If you need to, you'll need to let counsel know. But
I do need to refer to my notes.
yes, ma'am.
Let me start this way. Let me hand you what has been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 84. State's Exhibit number 84, and ask if you can tell me if that pertains to a particular FBI item number.
That pertains to FBI item number 2, which is the debris from the left front floor of the Hyundai Elantra.
And let me hand you what has been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 87. Does this pertain to a particular item number for the FBI?
This
Labeled by the FBI in evidence.
This is FBI laboratory item 10, which is the vacuum sweepings from right front seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra.
And let me hand you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 88. Does this correspond to an FBI item number?
It does. This is item 11, which is the vacuum sweepings from left rear seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra.
Let me hand you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 86. Does this correspond to an FBI item number?
Yes, it does. This is FBI item 12, which is the vacuum sweepings from right rear seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra.
I want to hand you what has been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 29. Does this correspond to an FBI item number?
It does. This is FBI item 16 through 28-1. And these are, do you want me to list each one of these out?
Does that contain within it a tape lift from the front dress of Teresa Sievers?
It does.
Let me hand you what has been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit number 15. Does that correspond to an FBI item number?
It does. This is FBI laboratory item 1, which is vacuum sweepings from kitchen floor of 27034 Jarvis Road.
And for those State's Exhibit and FBI item numbers that you have just reviewed, and as to the tape lift, specifically to the tape lift from the front of the dress of Teresa Sievers, are those items from which you had just talked about finding exhibiting the same microscopic optical properties, the purple and purple blue shaded fibers from what the from the varieties? Are these did you in these items find that there was the same microscopic and optical properties as with your known fibers you had taken?
Yes, the purple and blue white variegated cotton fibers exhibiting the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as the purple blue white variegated cotton fibers comprising the item 32 coveralls near roadway were recovered from the item 2, FBI item 2, debris from left front floor of the Hyundai Elantra. Item 10, vacuum sweepings from the right front seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra. FBI item 11, vacuum sweepings from left rear seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra. Item 12, vacuum sweepings from the right rear seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra. Item 16, tape lift from the front of the dress of Teresa Sievers. Item 12, tape lift from left leg of Teresa Sievers. And items 1 through 1-2, which were vacuum sweepings from the kitchen floor of 27034 Jarvis Road, the paper from the vacuum sweepings, and pieces of metal from the vacuum sweepings. Accordingly,
Let me
these...
just stop for a moment. You said item 12, the tape lift from the left front leg of Teresa Sievers. Would you refer to your notes to make sure that item 12 is the accurate number?
Item 12 is the vacuum sweepings from right rear seat and floor of the Hyundai Elantra, and item 16 is the tape lift from front dress of Teresa Sievers.
And is item 22 the tape lift from the left leg of Teresa Sievers?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you as to the conclusion that you drew.
And accordingly, these fibers are consistent with originating from item 30, another item comprised of fibers that exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties.
So a number of these items, I think item 2, item 10, item 11, and item 12 all came from different locations in the Hyundai Elantra. Is that correct?
Correct.
And for those items, you found the fibers were consistent with originating.
Objection to the counsel testifying.
Overruled, you can finish your question.
You found that these fibers were consistent with originating from item 32 or another item comprised of fibers that exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties.
Yes.
Now, I just want to, you also in that spoke about item 16, the tape lift from the front dress of Teresa Sievers, and item 22, the tape lift from the left leg of Teresa Sievers.
Yes.
And to that, did you reach the same conclusion we just discussed?
I did, yes.
And you also spoke about item 1 and item 1 through 2, the vacuum sweepings from the kitchen floor, as well as item 1-3. And did you make the same conclusion with those as well?
I did, yes.
Now, you spoke of, when we looked at your PowerPoint a few moments ago, you spoke of 5 analytical methods used in fiber comparison. Which methods did you use in comparing the fibers from FBI item 32, which is State's Exhibit 51, the coveralls recovered from the side of the road? What analytical methods did you make the comparison with these fibers?
Are you referring to the cotton fibers?
Yes.
I used all of our analytical methods I discussed using comparison microscopy, polarized light microscopy, fluorescence microscopy, as well as microspectrophotometry.
Now, you also spoke earlier when we were looking at your slides of 7 microscopic characteristics you examine with natural fibers that are for cotton fibers. Which of those do you use in your comparison?
I used all of the characteristics in my comparison.
And so what would that include?
That would include the color of the fibers, the color variability, as well as any surface color that may be present, the shape of the fiber, as well as the diameter of the fiber, as far as the microscopic characteristics. Also, if a fiber is, whether or not it's dichroic, which means when you move the fiber in different ways on the microscope, they can appear different colors when that change. So that is also something we evaluate.
Did you mention diameter? Did you also mention diameter? You may have, and
I think I did, but yes, diameter as well.
And is this just your first step, that comparison of those characteristics you just listed?
Yes.
And then what is your next step?
Well, after comparison microscopy, I move into polarized light microscopy, followed by fluorescence microscopy, followed by microspectrophotometry.
The last test.
Microspectrophotometry. Sure.
Now, we've been talking about cotton fibers. Did you also conduct an examination for nylon fibers?
I did, yes.
And with respect to that, with the nylon fibers with which you conducted an examination, what were your findings? Were there any fibers that you compared that you found consistent with those originating from item 32?
Yes, purple, blue, white variegated nylon fibers exhibiting the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as the purple and purple, blue, white variegated fibers comprising the item 32 coveralls from roadway were recovered from FBI item 2, which was the debris from the left front floor of the Hyundai Elantra, and items 1 through 1-2, which were vacuum sweepings from the kitchen floor of 27034 Jarvis Road.
And did you reach, after your examination, a conclusion?
Yes, I did. Accordingly, these fibers are consistent with originating from item 32 or another item comprising fibers that exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties.
With the examination of the nylon fibers, did you utilize those 5 methods of examination of which you spoke earlier?
Yes, I did.
And did you also start, as you discussed with the cotton fibers, with doing that initial run-through of those, I think it's 7 characteristics that you listed on your slide as your initial?
Yes, I did.
And what are the if you would remind us, what are the characteristics for manufactured fibers that you initially look at when you are comparing under the microscope?
I look for fiber color, surface color, variation of color. I also examine for the diameter of the fiber, as well as the shape of the fiber, any voids or inclusions within that fiber that may be present.
And then did you then follow, as you mentioned before, with the other methods of examination once you've done that initial comparison?
Yes, I did.
Now, FBI item 32, which is States Exhibit 51, did that have both natural and manufactured fibers?
It did, yes.
And those were both what, cotton and nylon? Is that what you've been speaking about?
The known sample was comprised of a blend of cotton and nylon fibers.
And were you able to, the trace evidence that you received, let me withdraw that. When you examined the known fibers, was there more of one of those fibers, natural, present versus manufactured? Did one have a larger presence of fibers in the known sample?
We don't really count as far as the type or distribution, but yes, there were more cotton fibers observed in the known sample than nylon.
Do the individual fibers, does individual fiber and worn fibers in a piece of cloth look the same under all lighting conditions?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Will an individual fiber versus, and a piece of woven fabric, so will an individual fiber and a piece of woven fabric look or have the same have the same color look in all lighting conditions?
Not necessarily. If you have fibers that are woven or comprising a fabric, say a shirt for example, you can look at that shirt under reflected light with all the fibers together, and it can look one color. However, during my exams, I examine individual fibers that are under high magnification transmitted light, so it can appear in that exam a little different in color.
I want to show you what we have marked for identification as States Exhibit 92. Previously shown to Defense Counsel.
Can I have both sides approach for a moment?
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as States Exhibit number 93. Can you look at States Exhibit number 93 and then let me know what is States Exhibit number 93?
This appears to be a photo taken from my laboratory notes. This is a copy of the photo that I took using a digital microscope of a portion of the purple blue cotton and manufactured fibers from item 2, and that's the FBI laboratory item 2, which is the debris from the left front floor of the Hyundai Elantra. It is a photo, really low magnification, just of the microscope slide containing a portion of the fibers.
Now,
Did you want me to hold it up?
moved introduced states exhibit number 93.
No objection. We'll show it admitted.
The photo, well, I'm gonna put it up here.
Okay.
The photo that we see, the picture that we see, so if you can hand it to me. The picture that we see in states exhibit number 93, in your report, is that a small little photo?
Well, it's not in my report. It's in my case notes. But yes, it is a small
In your
photo.
case notes, is it a small little photo? So is this an enlargement of the photo that was found in your case notes?
It appears to be yes.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Mr. Hunter, do you have any suggestions? Well, Your Honor, if I might, the old-fashioned way again,
Yes, ma'am.
my apologies. I'm going to have you hold this up to the jury, point out a few things, and then I'm going to ask the bailiff to walk down the jury so that they may see, or, Your Honor, might the witness step off the stand so she's more into the middle of the jury to hold this up?
Either that or the bailiff can hold it up, whatever you prefer.
Well, I think she's going to point to a few items on the
She
photo.
can step down.
Thank you. If you would just step down for a moment. Now, if you would just, in States Exhibit 93, one, there is a blue dot in the middle of it. What is that blue dot?
The blue dot is actually my Sharpie marker that I make whenever I find papers in my initial comparison across the page, where once you go back to continue the line. So that is
Turn this way.
If you guys can either turn or counsel can get up if you need to, and your client can as well if you need to move.
I think we have this working out.
Okay. That's better for everybody.
I'm not sure I can make it brighter than that on the screen.
You can shut the shades all the way if you would like.
Maybe we could for just a few moments, Your
Okay.
Honor. Using the laser pointer, could you just identify for the jury what the fibers that we're looking at in this particular photo? Because I see fibers at the top that look a little different than fibers in the middle. If you could just explain what the jury is seeing in this photograph or exhibit.
So this is a photo of the fibers that are still, they're mounted on a glass microscope with mounting media and a cover slip. So they're between two pieces of glass. This is taken not using high magnification microscopy, but was taken using a digital microscope. And the fibers that I was taking a picture of were the fibers that were numerous fibers kind of clumped together all around in here. That's what I was taking a photo of. There are other fibers on the slide that were here that was just on the slide as well.
And these were fibers that you obtained, you said, from item 2?
Yes.
And were these fibers used in your comparison of fibers from the known sample, item 51?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We can, I think, raise the Now, did you also forward hairs that you found when you were doing your trace examination within the trace evidence to the DNA section of the lab?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
If you bear with me just a moment, Your Honor. I may approach.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 94 for identification. If you can just take a look at what's inside without necessarily showing the jury. So if you can just take a look.
Having a hard time to put it below. There you go.
Okay.
Are these the containers that had the hairs that you forwarded it to the DNA lab for analysis?
Yes.
What exhibit is that?
94.
Thank you.
That the state tenders the witness, Your Honor. I'm just going to move some of this to the over. Thank you. And Your Honor, I've tendered the witness, but one last question. State, or one last request. State moves State's Exhibit number 94 into evidence.
We'll show it admitted.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We watched a PowerPoint presentation that you led us through, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in that, it said that you are the hair and fiber group or unit, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And are you experienced in analyzing hair?
Yes,
Did you in fact analyze hair in this case?
I did.
Let's talk about the trace evidence. By its very nature, trace evidence is very small, correct?
Yes.
And frequently not extensive in quantity. Would you agree with that?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
How about in this case?
I guess I would ask what you mean by extensive.
Well, you went through an awful lot of the exhibits that you analyzed. Was each exhibit fairly small and contained, or is that a lot of trace evidence? Based on your experience.
Well, I think with every item I examine, and this case is no different, there's usually a lot of trace evidence.
And the importance, if you would agree, to what you receive is actually the collection process. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
The collection process of trace evidence is essential to your analysis or examination. Would you agree?
Yes.
And you didn't collect this trace evidence, did you?
For which items?
For any of the items.
There were some items that the FBI laboratory collected,
Let me rephrase
but
the question.
some were not.
Okay. The FBI didn't collect these items from the Hyundai Elantra or from the crime scene. Is that correct?
Which crime scene are you talking about?
The one on Jarvis Road?
Okay. No, we did not.
You did not do the vacuum sweepings from any of the vehicles involved in this case?
No, those were collected and submitted to the laboratory for examination purposes.
And were these collected by Lee County Sheriff's Office, to your knowledge?
I believe so.
Okay. So you receive the items packaged, like we saw them packaged, is that right?
Yes.
Are you familiar with crime scene protocol and what is to be done? Is that part of your job to be familiar with how items should be collected?
Yes.
So it's important to secure anything that's to be analyzed or collected. Secure, for instance, the car would have to be secured, correct? Would you agree with that?
Secured in what way?
From wherever it's found. It's important to preserve all of the evidence.
Yes.
Were you aware that this Hyundai Elantra was a rental car?
Yes.
And did that factor into your analysis in any way?
No, it did not. I just examined what was collected from the rental car.
And what's provided to you?
Correct.
Now, when it comes to trace evidence in general, would you identify it as transferable from one place to another?
Yes.
And can you explain what that means, transferable?
That means that trace evidence such as hairs and fibers can be transferred between two people or a person and object.
So from one car to another, from clothing to a car, from an airport to clothing, are those all examples of something, of a way that things can be transferred? Someone goes to an airport, they sit down, they're probably picking up some type of fibers.
Yes.
they go into a car, they sit down in the car now, those fibers can be transferred to the car.
Yes.
Did you have any other trace evidence from a car other than the Hyundai Elantra?
Yes, I did.
Did you have any carpet samples as known standards from other cars?
No.
Just from the Hyundai Elantra?
Yes.
I'm going to make sure I... So you analyzed fibers in this case from coveralls, correct?
Yes.
Can you describe, did you receive the coveralls?
We did, yes.
Can you describe what they look like?
The fibers from the coveralls?
Yes, you may. What are you referring to specifically?
I am referring to my processing notes. These coveralls were they appeared with a visual eye to be a described navy blue twill weave coveralls, and they also appear to be damaged. So the left sleeve, when we received it, was separated. The left pocket flap separated. There were holes in various locations, and it appeared worn.
And did you compare those to similar coveralls in sample coveralls, so to say? Did you have a standard sample of a set of coveralls?
I didn't have any other coveralls except for these item 32 coveralls from the near roadway.
So you, is there anything, try that. So you analyzed those coveralls that you had from, did you take a sample of them?
Yes, a known sample was collected from the coveralls.
And then you also collected anything else that you saw on those coveralls, correct? Any other items of evidence or what may become evidence on those?
Yes, part of the processing of the coveralls included the collection of foreign debris from the coveralls as well as a known sample.
Okay, and that's where we saw where you hang them up and you physically look and then you take anything you find off of there.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know if these coveralls are unique to one particular manufacturer?
I do not.
Do you know how many manufacturers of this sort of coverall there are in the United States?
I do not.
How about with regard to carpet? Are the fibers in carpet, are they in any way unique to each and every individual car?
Well, fiber exams are not associated to any type of car to exclusion of all others, no.
Okay, all right. So essentially what you are analyzing is what's in front of you, your known samples to the items of evidence.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just a moment. So you indicated that you performed fiber analysis and examination on the from the coveralls, correct?
Yes.
And hair, correct?
And hair, yes.
Okay. Do you know if they were examined for blood?
They were not examined for blood in the FBI laboratory.
Okay. And how about for any sort of tape residue or duct tape, say? Anything like that, to your knowledge?
No, I don't.
Okay. Going back to the fiber analysis, fair to say that fiber association is not a means of positive identification?
That's correct.
Okay, in fact, that was in your PowerPoint, wasn't
Yes.
it? Okay. And that not only is not associated with positive identification, but never to a single item to the exclusion of all others. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's also in your
Yes.
PowerPoint. Okay. So essentially, you can't have a conclusive identification. You can exclude certain things, correct?
I can conclude that they exhibit differences. Yes.
Okay. Or that they're consistent or inconsistent with what you're comparing it to.
Correct.
Okay. But none of that evidence speaks to a certain time frame of when an item of debris was placed on there, be it hair or trace evidence.
I cannot say where or when, the fibers got to that location. No.
Okay, nor can you say the circumstances, correct?
Correct.
And nor do you rely on any statistical probabilities, is that correct?
No, we do not.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, thank you.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the PowerPoint to which counsel just referred on one of your slides, I believe I'd ask you to remind the jury what the entire sentence was or entire bullet point was in the jury, to the jury. If I might approach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure.
In talking about fiber associations, which you indicate is not a means of positive identification, is there also a however that goes along with that conclusion?
Yes, it says that fiber association is not a means of positive identification. And it says, however, due to the variability in the manufacturing, dyeing, consumer use, and weathering of fibers within a textile, one would not expect to encounter a fiber at random that displays the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as a particular source.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
No other question.
Is this witness to be retained or released?
Released, Your Honor.
No objection.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. You're free to go. Yes, ma'am. I was going to get to that. I assumed. We will take a brief recess, let everyone use the restroom, stretch their legs if you'd like. Please don't talk about the case among yourselves or with anybody else, and we'll be with you momentarily. Mr. Rodriguez? We have, okay. Mr. Villacava's not present?